Okay, good morning. We're here this morning with Thom Jewell, the past mayor of Birchcliff Summer Village. Thank you for being with us here today.
All right, my treat.
As we've discussed, we have some questions about the wastewater treatment project that you did in Birchcliff. As the past mayor there, when did your council decide to move ahead with the preparation for the tie-in to the municipal wastewater treatment project? What were the triggers for action on that?
Yeah, the program started at the turn of the last century when the provincial government realized that managing wastewater in the province was going to be really expensive and very difficult if we continue with our distributed system. So they're pushing hard to have a few large systems that they could manage. And the closest system to us is in Red Deer. So they introduced the Water for Life program, and that program funded the expansion or the transmission up past Lacombe to the north and down to Ols in the south and out to Sylvan Lake and around the lake. So that was kind of the driver for us to put in the municipal system, because then we could tie in, we had a regional system to tie into. So by 2003, we had a vision for the village. By 2006, we started on the plan for the village. So that's 3 years of thinking and wasting time. Anyway, so we moved ahead. Our driver was, by that time, we had a pumping station at the end of our village. Provincial government was kind of on our case to say, so where's your municipal gathering system? So we got after it in earnest in about 2006. So a number of things we had to do. We had to get people on board. You know, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? How much is it going to cost? The basic questions. And we had to get the province on board, so we did spend a fair amount of time in Edmonton chatting up a whole series of Department of Transportation ministers. The good news, bad news. Every time we turn around, we lost a minister. But the good news is that he was somewhere else in the cabinet, so our issue got broadcast far and wide. So that was good. In terms of funding, the province funds the regional system. And because we're a municipality, we're part of that system. So Sunbreakers are a municipality, they're part of that system. So the 5 summer villages, the 2 counties, are sort of partners in that. They're in the commission, but their capacity allocation is limited to 10% of what the municipalities need. So if they need more than that, they have to pay for it themselves. As an example, the pumping station at the end of our village cost about $2.2 million to build. The cost to our village was about $3,000. The province paid 92% of the capital cost, and the rest of the cost was shared amongst the 8 parties in the commission. So that worked exceptionally well, and that was kind of an impetus for us to get on with building our municipal system. Without that regional program, there's no way that we could have afforded to pump our sewage all the way to Red Deer. It just wouldn't work.
Great. Did your council have any specific concerns before going into the project?
We had a general idea of where the trend was going, but then the detail concerns were, of course, around the details. We run a kind of a mean and lean administration for the village. We realized that we didn't have the skill sets we needed. We didn't have detail engineering. We didn't have an engineering project manager. Some of the financial analysis that we needed, we hired that out to people that were experienced and exceptionally good at putting that together. So we had a guy put together our business plan, and we stole that from Northern Wold. And I assume that Sunbreaker Cove borrowed that from Birchcliff. I know it's making the rounds. What it is, the whole package, and it asks all of the questions that we need to ask. And it sure made it a lot easier for us as a council to say, well, what don't we know? And it turns out there was a lot. But we can push ahead with the concept, but we can ask the questions. And our business development programmer, and that helped us an awful lot to deal with a lot of the questions that we have. So what are the questions? Pretty obvious. Why are you doing this? Do you really need to do this? Who's going to pay for it, and how much is that going to cost? And so as we went along, we didn't have a specific cost. We had a range of costs. It's about this much to put together this municipal system. As you progress, as we went into detailed design, then we got the same cost, kind of middle of the ground, but the variance was less. So we're down to, at detailed design, we're down to plus or minus 25%. By the time we got to tender, we're still at what we thought was plus or minus 15%. When our tenders came back, it turns out we were at the bottom of the chart. We still didn't fit in that range, which is good news for us. So we were able to push ahead and progress the thing. So it comes down to why are you doing this and how much is it going to cost?
Great.
One questions.
In terms of the community, what were their concerns?
Why are we doing this and how much is it going to cost? Exactly the same thing. We're all on the same page. And, give me some answers. Tell me how much it's going to cost. And some people, of course, wanted detailed numbers. And we had to, I guess, maintain our position that we have tremendous precision, but we don't have accuracy. So I can tell you down to the last nickel what this piece is going to cost. But when you put it all together, until you go to tender and you get a contractor to tell you how much it's going to cost, you've got an idea. So it's about $5 million, plus or minus 2. So somewhere between 3 and 7, which is better than somewhere between, say, 20 and 30. And people say, well, is it $25 million or is it $5 million? So give me an idea, give me an order of magnitude. And that was good for a lot of people. They said, okay. And they did the math on it. They went through and said, okay, how many properties we got? How is this all going to work? And so that helped a lot to get people on the page. We talked a lot about we're putting in infrastructure. And infrastructure, this one in particular, is good for probably 80 years. So you're paying on the front end for infrastructure that's going to be here for the next 80 years. And some people had a problem with that. So why should we pay now for 80 years from now? And we have the full range of properties in the community. Some that I just inherited this little cottage from my Aunt Ginny, and I'm paying the taxes, but I can't afford to put in a sewer system. And two of the ones that are, we just built a brand new house, and where's our sewer system? We don't have room for a field, so we're in pump out. So people with different drivers for sure. So as we could define a little better what our cost structure looked like, and who was going to get what, who was going to pay what, and how this thing was going to work, and who was going to pay the operating costs, and how all of that. So we just kept, as we got questions that people had concerns with, we tried to address those as best we could, recognizing that we didn't always have the answer at the time.
Great, thank you. Did Birchcliff get any extra funding beyond the MSI grants to cover construction costs?
No. We did get MSI funding. There's a place where I think the summer villages should get together and get some decent MSI funding, because we get like 50% of what a normal village gets. But we recognized that we had a project coming at us, so we were putting MSI funding in reserves. We're also putting a portion of our tax base in reserves. So we had tax funds, we had savings, we had MSI funding. We told our community that there's only one more place to go, and that's the federal, like the Build Canada Fund. The names change over time. And when we told them we're not going to go until we know that we've used up all of the funding opportunities that are out there. And at the end of the day, Build Canada didn't feel this was worth, well, I don't know how they figured that out. We didn't get funded from Build Canada. So that was our trigger. Okay, we've considered all the places we can get money from, and that's not one of them. So MSI and savings are what paid for the sewer system.
Thank you. Did most lot owners need to replace their existing septic tanks?
No, very few. We had an inspector. The village hired an inspector who is, again, a skilled person in that field, and we don't have a sewer tank inspector in the village. And he went around and literally inspected every one of the tanks. And his criteria was, if this tank isn't going to last for the next 5 years, then it fails, and it either needs to be replaced or you come up with a different idea. For those whose tanks were deteriorating, it was a good idea to replace the tank because now you got chunks of concrete in a grinder pump, and that's never a good idea. What my neighbor did is he put in a prefab pump and container. It's about the size of a gas barrel, and it's got a pump in it. And he just lowered that down in the existing tank, so it really was pretty convenient and a reasonable cost. So I can't even throw out a number, but it was very few of the tanks that were inspected that were broken down that couldn't be used.
What timing did your village impose?
Just get an inspector to go look at your tank. Or when you leave in the fall, make sure it's dead empty, and then you come back in the spring and you look at it if it's full of water. If it's leaking in, it's leaking out.
Right.
Put that on your list of things to consider.
Right. What timing did your village impose to get connected? Was there a capital cost advantage to connecting early?
We gave people 2 years from commissioning. So when the pipeline was up and running, people had 2 years to connect. Was there a capital benefit? No. There wasn't. We didn't give people a bonus for joining early. Or we did put a provision in that if you don't join up within 2 years, then the village has the right to connect you.
Okay.
And we did have people say, well, my system's good. I don't need to replace it. Well, it turns out the provincial regulations stipulate that there will be only one sewage treatment process in a community. So if you have access to the municipal sewer line, then that's what you're going to use. You have to shut down the rest of them.
Right.
So that's what we did.
Was much landscaping needed to remediate any damage that was caused with the tie-ins?
Precious little damage. We were blown away. When we put the main line in, it's about a 4-inch line. It varies as you go up and down the road. It was all drilled in, so every now and again they had to dig a hole to connect the lines as they went. Wherever we came to a property, there was a curb stop, a shutoff valve that was in the ditch. And so they dug that up, went down and connected all of those. As they worked their way down the ditch, the main line was almost starting to grow back, before they got there. By drilling, you don't have nearly the same remediation costs. When we bid this out, the contractor came in and gave us a very good price on running the connection from the main line to each person's tank, which worked really well for us. And that line's only like 1.5 inches. It's like a garden hose. So they brought in a little rig and they could move it almost anywhere they wanted, and they just drilled it right beside the tank and then brought it to the surface. So the lines are all down about 8 feet. The main line's down at 8 feet, and the lines coming in are at 8 feet until they come up beside the tank, and then however deep your tank is. So that worked very well for us, and we got an awful lot of people that jumped on board and said, "Wow, that's a good price. Let's do it now." And so they did connect, and so we got the vast majority of our people connected, probably in the first 6 months, and then a few people that didn't want to connect until where they were building a house or they're going to do that, 100 different reasons. But and again, almost everybody's connected within the 2-year window.
Great. Does your village use the same pump system or the grinder pumps that Sunbreaker Cove is proposing?
We have. We looked at grinder pumps because of our village is up and down where the houses are. We used a different pump than what they used in our home. But everybody in our village has the same, not necessarily the same manufacturer, because you can choose whichever pump you want, but it has to be the same criteria, the same pumping pressure and same volume, because it's an integrated line. And if you have big pumps and little pumps, the line will break.
That makes sense.
So we don't use the fluid pumps that they're using in Pigeon Lake. It didn't make much sense to us to have all of that effluent going in the tank and half of it going down the sewer line, the other half of sewer trucks driving up and down the road. So, and our engineers recommended very strongly that we stick with the grinder pumps. Okay. So that's what we've done.
Do you have an opinion on whether that's different or better than the step systems used by some summer villages around Pigeon Lake?
Absolutely. Yeah, my opinion is that we went the right way. All of the effluent that comes into your tank drops into the heavy side, and all of that is picked up with a grinder pump. and it is shot all the way to red deer, if you will, and treated properly before it goes back into the water table. Just skimming off the liquids is equivalent to what we were doing with the field before, except it's not going into the local groundwater. It's being pumped away, but there's no way to get rid of the solids that are still in your tank except to bring in the back truck and take those out. So it really didn't solve the issue. Didn't make it an easy sewer system, like you get in a big city.
Right. Does your village charge the same fees to all connected lots, or do you use water meters to allocate some of the operational costs?
Yeah, it gets back to what's the future, the long-term look at our village administration. When we put in the sewer pipe, the village paid for all of that. There's no moving parts, so it doesn't need a whole lot of maintenance on it. So all the maintenance is in the individual property, and really what that comes down to is changing the pump out when it finally wears out. So when we looked at that, we charged everybody the same rate, what we call postage stamp. It didn't matter if you were right beside the receiving station or if you're at the far end of the village, everybody paid the same capital cost. So and part of our village is zoned seasonal. So the properties can only be used certain times of the year. For the infrastructure cost, putting in the pipeline, those people everybody paid the same. For the operational costs, there's two parts. One is you gotta transport all that sewage to Red Deer, and you gotta treat it. So the treatment and transportation costs are each property that has the ability to operate 12 months of the year pays the same amount. And each property that is zoned restricted to seasonal pays a quarter of that operational cost for the transportation and treatment. There's also a maintenance cost in the line, so once or twice a year we have it pumped out, cleaned out, flushed out, and everybody pays their share of that. So it's very similar to your power bill.
Great, thank you. Were there any operational problems individuals or the municipality should be aware of and can take steps to avoid, particularly with respect to the blockages or freezing problems?
Yeah, we did have a couple of tanks that froze. One was operator error. And the other one was, I'm not sure what the other one was. It got fixed within a very short period of time. But vast majority of the tanks just started up and ran and didn't have any specific issues. Part of that is a function of having the right person. Here we go again. Bring somebody in who has experience, who is an expert at this kind of thing, and get them to do your connections for you. There's not much in the way of intricate connections. There's a backflow valve, and a pump, and that's pretty much it. So we didn't have a lot of trouble. I haven't been aware of any blockages, with the exception of the main line. We had a new customer connect, and the line was blocked. So we went and sent a flushing crew out, and they had to look at it. And for some reason, that piece didn't get flushed originally. It was the first person on that line. So they spent a couple hours and flushed it out, and it works fine. So yeah, touch wood, we really haven't had a lot of problems with it. I'm very good.
Now that the project's completed, how does the community feel about it?
The vast majority of our community is very happy with it. For a couple of reasons, why did we do this? And they finally realized how nice it is to have a sewage system that takes your sewage away. Most everybody, in fact, everybody here is on wells. They're concerned that continued use of the fields and continued high density housing that's going in, high density being they're just that much bigger houses, fill up a whole lot. And they've got 4 bedrooms instead of 2, and 6 showers instead of 2 or 1. So there's a big usage. People were concerned that it would drain into the lake and damage the lake. And realistically, it's going to drain into your aquifer and damage your aquifer. And if you spend $5 million to bring your sewage out, it's going to cost you more than $5 million to bring your water in. So protect the wells. So it was a big deal. And that's, I think, where most people got on board and they said, oh, yeah, I see that. Okay, well, we can live with that. So we had like 10% of the population that were dead against it. Absolutely not. We had about 10% that were, why are we thinking about it? Get on with it. Most of those people were on pump up, and the cost of pump up is just brutal, very expensive. So they had a financial driver to be on board, which leaves 80% in the middle. And they kind of want to know, so give me some information. Tell me more about this. Why should I be excited about it? So I'm pretty sure that the 10% that were avidly for it are still for it, and the 80% in the middle are for it. And probably half of the people that said, no, we don't need this, hell no, have looked at it. In fact, I've talked to a few of them. They said, well, yeah, it's actually a pretty good system. We like it, and it's working for it. So a lot of their issues got allayed as we finally got to the final planning stages. One point, when you get to pulling the trigger on this thing, you need to have a project manager who knows what he's doing and working with the contractors that are out there. So you get what you paid for at the end of the day. You don't get a lot of finger pointing going on. You get done right. And so that was important for us. And you don't make any changes. Once you're done the planning, you turn it loose. If you want a really, really expensive change, then you change it halfway through the construction. So don't do that. Get it done, get it planned, get it, and then turn it loose. So yeah, so it works reasonably well. Our community, because of our advanced savings and the MSI funding that we squirrel away and put into a reserve, we came out neutral on the cost of the municipal portion. So we didn't have to contribute anything municipal. Everybody did have to pay from the property line into their tank and put on a pump. So that helped a lot too.
So you've given us some recommendations for the municipality on how to make sure that project is completed properly. Any recommendations for the residents of Sunbreaker Cove as they move forward to completion?
Yeah, there's a couple of things we did that I think worked well, and partly they're a communication issue. And the village hired a guy to go around and inspect the tanks. And so everybody saw that this guy's coming looking at the tanks, and there's somebody you can talk to about the tank, right? Everybody's looking at the hole saying, what do you see? What do you think? And so you got some feedback on that part of it. If you got to buy a new tank, then it gives you time to think about how are we going to do that. If you don't need to buy a new tank, then true, that's lucky. We took a little cash off the top end of that. But it gave people a chance to realize that some people didn't know where the tank was. Okay, so we found a tank. We looked at it and inspected that, and that's okay. And then we sent around another guy who was like a landman, a good old boy, and he went around and talked to people and said, okay, your tank's here, and the line's going to be out here in the street. Where do you want your curb stop? Because we can drill in, but we can't go under a foundation. So if we move the curb stop over here, then we can get a direct line, or we can swing around and get right to your tank. And I think that made a big difference too. If we had gone ahead and just plumped the curb stops in somewhere along the road, then we would have had a lot more trouble connecting, and the connecting is what the residents paid for it. So by working together on that, then people had an opportunity to move the curb stop down the side of their property a little bit and drill on an angle if they needed to, or whatever. So that helped a lot. So advanced planning, thinking about it, yeah, that'll happen one day. Start thinking about it now. Find out where your tank is, and figure out where you put a curb stop so that you can connect with the simplest possible connection. Drilling from the street is the simplest possible connection. These guys can do amazing stuff with the drills. Put the pipe right beside your tank. And then when your connection guy comes in, it's relatively easy for him to do it, and you don't mess up the whole yard digging the trench there. So plan ahead.
Great. And finally, do you have any sense of the average cost per resident in Birchcliff?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was less than $5,000 each. Mine, for instance, I'm pretty close to the property line. I paid $125 to bring the pipe to the tank. The pump itself is about $2,500. And then I had to have it connected. So that's $25,000, so $9,000, $35,000. So I was at something less than $4,000.
Right.
For mine. My neighbor down the road put in a barrel with a tank in it and everything, and I forget what his number was, but he was about $7,500, I think, by the time you did all that. A lot cheaper than putting in a tank.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't, that you'd like
Oh,
to
I'm
add?
sure there is, but I don't know what it was. No, it's, I think when you look at the whole package, the provincial government is sponsoring the regional transportation system, transmission system. I won't go there, it's an old joke. And they're paying 92% of the cost. Now is the time to connect. We're building infrastructure for the next 80 years at least. And the provincial government wants to get one step ahead with the infrastructure. To retrofit the same infrastructure is brutally expensive. So take advantage of that pipeline coming in from Birchcliff. We'll send it to you from Birchcliff to Sunbreaker Cove. Take advantage of that pipeline while it's still available.
Well, thank you so much. And thank
While
you
it's
for
still
being
available.
here today. And we appreciate your time.
All righty. Thank you.